Friends have been leaving flowers and cards at the scene of the car crash in Tanjong Pagar, which left the driver and 4 passengers dead.
A British man and his Singaporean wife plead guilty to breaching COVID-19 rules when he sneaked out of his hotel room to meet her.
79 years to the day Singapore fell, a war memorial service remembers those who made the ultimate sacrifice.
Welcome to The Big Story, coming to you live from the Straits Times newsroom. I'm Olivia Quay.
And I'm Haryanto Dimana. You can subscribe to the Straits Times channel so you never miss a single episode.
We're tracking latest developments on Saturday's fatal car crash in Tanjong Pagar. Now, more flowers and offerings were placed at the crash site, which has been boarded up.
Multimedia journalist Fazana Friday was there earlier this afternoon speaking to passers-by and residents.
It's been 2 days since the fatal crash at 37 Tanjong Pagar Road, which killed all 5 men aboard. As you can see behind me, the crash site is boarded up. Business along this stretch has resumed after the Chinese New Year weekend, with restaurants opened for today's lunch crowd. A few passerbys paid their respects in front of the shophouse, including a friend of 2 of the victims.
My whole persona is down, my person is down, can't sleep well, very heart pain. I feel very sorry that I saw him at the accident. Then sometimes I feel that, how to say, from bottom of my heart, viewers in Facebook, please don't comment nasty comment, show some respect to their family members.
So I came here to pay respect towards the deceased. They are friends of friends, and it is a personal tragedy. I think it is possible for us to show some compassion while also disagree with the reckless behavior of the deceased.
For residents such as Rita Gonzalez, who's lived in Tanjong Pagar for 20 years, drivers flouting the speed limit at night has been an issue of increasing concern.
We hear cars racing along these roads in the wee hours of the night, and it's quite frightening because a lot of our residents, including myself, we get up at night and we hear speeding cars. A growing concern for us because these roads are very curvature in nature with sharp bends.
Investigations are ongoing. According to the police, the 5 men killed in this incident means it's the highest number of people killed in a single traffic accident in the past decade. The crash also brought to light other issues in the Tanjong Pagar stretch, including narrowed roads, especially with parallel parking implemented. Fazana Friday for The Straits Times.
The Straits Times' senior transport correspondent Christopher Tan joins us now to share more about the mechanical aspects of the crash. Welcome, Chris. So, Chris, BCA said that the shop house sustained minimal damage, pointing a possibility that the impact wasn't that great. How then did the car catch fire?
Well, actually, in the first place, we don't really know how big the impact was. This is the initial assessment by the BCA. Even if the car was going in at high speed and had a great impact, the shop house integrity could still withstand such a crash, because such buildings, especially when they're built back when, they're pretty solid. All right, but assuming, let's say, that it was a low impact crash, that does not mean that it won't catch fire. Given the right circumstances, any car can catch fire. And if you look at SCDF records in the past, it's interesting to note that most vehicular fires occur with either diesel or CNG cars. Petrol cars actually form the minority. Now, whether this car was actually modified or not, we don't know for sure. The car has been towed to a pound, and I think the LTA will probably do an assessment to find out if indeed there were modifications made to the car. And as you know, any modification made to a car will somehow alter its integrity, alter its safety aspects. Cars are made to withstand fires, even in a fairly big crash. The fuel tank is situated mostly under the rear seat, so in the case of a rear collision, the impact doesn't come to the tank. The tank will withstand all kinds of impact. It's made of plastic now. Frontal side also. The fuel lines, they may break, but also again, the impact zones very seldom will compromise the region where these lines are compromised. And even if there were fuel leaks, unless it's very, very high heat or some kind of spark, it will not ignite. You know, it's not like what you see in Hollywood movies where, you know, a gunshot will set the whole thing ablaze. It's not so easy. But having said that, it does not mean that a car cannot catch fire. Even cars which are stationary sometimes catch fire because of electrical faults, right? Most fires actually occur from electrical faults,
Right.
not from impact.
All right.
Chris, so what about Tanjong Pagar Road itself, the road conditions? You know, what about the road conditions could have contributed to the crash, you think?
Well, no road in Singapore is made for racing, except for that Marina Bay stretch that we close every year for the night race, right? This stretch especially is extremely narrow, extremely curvy, and the part where we saw in that famous video that's being shared around, where the car sped past at close to 200 km per hour, there were at least two bends, fairly sharp bends, and at the second bend, there was a change in gradient. So you have a bend and a change in gradient. That kind of puts all kinds of forces that into a car. Plus the fact that this car was actually carrying 5 people. It's not meant to do that. It's a coupe, it's a 4-seater. And if you have 5 on board, means at least one was not belted up, right? At least one was not belted up, or all 3 were not belted up. We don't know. Again, we don't know. But assuming that at least one was not belted up, and in the case of sudden braking or sudden swerving motion, and that person would have collided with either his fellow occupants, the roof, the seat in front, and that would have also caused quite a lot of injuries.
Yeah.
And that may explain why they couldn't get out after the car came to a halt.
Yeah.
Because if everybody was belted up and airbags were working, you would very likely be able to walk away, even in a fairly huge crash. So the thing here, it was the fire. Fire would take probably a few seconds to ignite and then to set the cabin ablaze. If they were still conscious, there is some likelihood that they could still unbelt, open the door, and escape. Of course, it's harder for the rear occupants because this is a 2-door, right? So it's a confluence of many factors, right? And maybe many errors, if you want.
Right.
First thing, you shouldn't be going at that speed. The car shouldn't be having 5 people on board, right? And if the car was modified, then that adds another extra element into the whole thing, right? But even in the best of conditions, that stretch of road is challenging. It's challenging even for someone like Hamilton, right? I mean, it's not a straight, wide road, to accommodate that kind of speed.
Well, Christopher, the traffic police said they would explore further enforcement operations in the vicinity, as well as road calming measures to slow traffic down. What kind of measures would work best, do you think?
First of all, I think a road like that is already fairly narrow, which discourages kind of high-speed, driving. To introduce more calming measures, you could, of course, but it will come at a cost, right? It means during the day, when that road is supposed to take in quite a lot of traffic, and this is a fairly busy road in the daytime, and if you have traffic calming measures like narrowing and all that.
Speed bumps are part of calming measures too?
Yes, yes. There are various kinds, right? Visual, physical. It would mean that, that road might not be able to take in as much traffic as that you need during, peak hours. Another alternative might be to, allow overnight free parking. So if you have a lot of cars on the sides at night, then people will find it more challenging to drive fast, or might be discouraged to choose that stretch of road. But there are 3,000 over km of roads in Singapore. If you do calming here, they'll find another place, right? You can't actually prevent behavior, right? Behavior is really the individual's control.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, Christopher. It was most informative and insightful as well. We've been speaking to Christopher Tan, Senior Transport Correspondent for the Straits Times.
Meanwhile, Ray B.O., the girlfriend of the car's driver, is still in critical condition and is in the ICU at Singapore General Hospital.
Ms. O suffered severe burns on about 80% of her body after she tried to rescue her boyfriend and passengers from the burning BMW. The 26-year-old is a former Singapore Airlines air stewardess and also sang Ke Thai on occasion.
An update on the COVID-19 situation here. 9 new cases were confirmed today. They were all imported who had been placed on stay-home notices on arrival in Singapore. More details will be shared tonight.
In other news, a Briton and his Singaporean fiancé pleaded guilty today to COVID-19 related offences. The couple got married in November, but back in September last year, Nigel Skier breached his stay-home notice at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel, sneaking out of his hotel room to meet his fiancée on another floor.
He left his room on the 14th story without wearing a mask on 3 times on September 21st. On the third occasion, he walked up the stairs at about 2:20 a.m. to meet his fiancée, whose room was on the 27th story. She wasn't serving SHN at the time. The couple will be sentenced on February 26th.
3 male foreigners are being investigated for allegedly participating in a public assembly without a permit outside the Myanmar embassy. 2 are Japanese nationals and the third is an Indonesian. Back on February the 5th, the police had warned against holding protests in Singapore related to the ongoing political events in Myanmar.
Veterans, families of those who died during World War II, and religious leaders today attended a scaled-down ceremony remembering the war. Held at the War Memorial Park in Beach Road, about 50 attendees observed a minute of silence and laid wreaths. The hour-long ceremony had a strong focus on making sure that memories of the war, essential to Singapore's national narrative, are not forgotten. An electronic book was also launched today, and it aims to help new generations to understand how we got here and why Singapore is worth defending.
Singapore's economy remains on track to grow by 4 to 6% this year. The Ministry of Trade and Industry said it's maintaining that GDP growth forecast given the progress made in COVID-19 vaccine development and deployment around the world.
MTI expects the economy to see a gradual recovery over the course of 2021, although the outlook remains uneven across sectors. For last year, the economy contracted by 5.4%, a reversal from the 1.3% growth recorded in 2019.
Well, UOB economist Barnabas Gunn is here to weigh in. So Barnabas, MTI maintained its 2021 forecast for the economy to expand by 4 to 6%, helped by the low base set this year. Where will we see growth though?
Yep, hi. Well, as we can see from the growth numbers alone, we have actually seen a somewhat encouraging manufacturing growth in 2020. And in fact, if we look at the December expansion for manufacturing, it is an encouraging one and sets somewhat of an optimistic tone for 2021. And also, if we account for the adoption of 5G technologies, the uptick in semiconductors demand, at least for the upcoming year, growth will likely be on the back of the manufacturing momentum. I think what's important to note, in fact, will also be the improvement in global trade wins, especially when we will likely see some uptick in external trade demand from and around the world. We have seen growth recovery, at least from key developed as well as developing economies, and that would mean the improvement of trade-related activities. And Singapore being a trade-reliant economy, we produce to trade and we produce to export, would mean that both manufacturing and trade activities could improve into the upcoming year.
Now, GDP for 2020 down 5.4%, but expected to rise to 6% this year. Barnabas, are we set to be back to pre-COVID levels?
Well, let us just define what is pre-COVID levels. I mean, in the sense that we have, more so if we look at the growth, the average growth pace between 2010 to 2019, that's 10 years, just during pre-COVID, Singapore has expanded by an average of 5% during this period of time, 2010 to 2019. And that would mean that in the absence of COVID-19, we can safely say that Singapore should expand by around these levels in 2020 and in 2021. Now, we all know that Singapore has contracted by 5.4% on a year-on-year basis in 2020, and we are only looking for a range of 4 to 6% for 2021. That would mean that if we do grow by between 4 to 6%, accounting for the minus 5.4% contraction in 2020, that would put Singapore's economy to where it first began in 2020. So if we just account for the 5% long-term average growth, we are nowhere near COVID-19 levels.
Oh, I see. Well, Barnabas, let's talk about the budget statement which DPM Heng will deliver tomorrow. What measures do you think could supercharge our economic recovery?
Well, I'm not so sure about supercharging, perhaps, but I think important to note really is that the budget is expected to allow Singapore to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic and emerge stronger. But I think it's also important to note that the budget will likely revisit medium to long-term measures to develop Singapore's advanced manufacturing capabilities, as well as what we do know, making Singapore as a smart nation by improving its digital connectivity and accelerating Singapore's industrial transformation. Importantly, I think the budget measures will likely be calibrated to cushion and support the industries that will likely still be in the doldrums given COVID-19. That would mean most likely the tourism-related industries as well as the aviation industries. And that would mean that COVID-19 will likely also introduce measures to try to support these ailing industries that still remain affected by COVID-19. However, other measures that will likely that has been introduced before from the broader scheme of things to benefit the entire economy will likely be scaled back. That would include the job support scheme that were previously used to support wages across Singapore's whole broad range of industries.
Now, on the job support scheme, Barnabas, that you brought up, of course, that was a major part of last year's 5 budgets to help the labour force. Now, that's set to expire next month. Now, we know these sort of measures can't be indefinite. So in terms of providing relief to workers, what are you expecting? Do you think it will come in the form of an extension to the JSS or other schemes?
Well, I think the growth numbers that we've seen in the fourth quarter has clearly shown that Singapore's economic recovery is uneven. There has been green shoots, or more so industries that have performed well, like the finance and insurance industries as well as communications. But other industries such as the tourism-related ones, retail trade, as well as aviation, still remains in the doldrums, and that would mean that the job support scheme could likely be extended for these industries. But I think other forms of policies that will also help Singapore to recover from COVID-19, really it's probably stemming from the COVID-19 support grant, whereby it is a scheme to help Singaporeans and PR who are still retrenched or placed on involuntary no-pay leave for 3 consecutive months, as announced in previous budgets in 2020, that could be revisited in budget 2021. Really, we do note that the unemployment rate for Singapore is at 3%, at least for the whole of 2020, and that is still higher than the long-term average at 2%. And that means that some form of support, at least from the job market, is still needed at this juncture.
Well, thank you so much, Barnabas, for coming on to the show. That was Barnabas Gan, economist at UOB. The Straits Times will be carrying DPM Heng's budget statement live tomorrow from 3 p.m. You can watch it on our Facebook, YouTube and Twitter platforms.
A year into the COVID-19 pandemic, how does Singapore reset itself for recovery in 2021? Last year saw Deputy Prime Minister Heng Swee Keat deliver an unprecedented 5 budgets, close to $100 billion in support measures and up to $52 billion drawn from past reserves, all to help Singaporeans through this crisis.
All Singaporeans aged 21 and above in 2020 will receive a one-off cash payout. I've decided that the GST increase will not take effect in 2021. I will launch an SG United Jobs and Skills package to create close to 100,000 opportunities. We'll support our aviation sector to ride out the COVID-19 pandemic. It is in times of crisis that the true character of a nation can be seen.
What does this year's budget have in store for Singaporeans? The Straits Times brings you Budget 2021, Resetting Singapore.
Join the Straits Times' Associate Editor Ven Srinivasan and a panel of industry experts as they discuss the key announcements with Money FM 89.3's Michelle Martin.
You can also look out for web specials, explainers and interactive graphics on our website.
Looking overseas, Myanmar's ousted leader Aung San Suu Kyi has been remanded in custody until Wednesday and not today as previously thought. Meanwhile, protesters had gathered again to demand her release and an end to military rule. Violence this time has been limited, but yesterday police opened fire to disperse protesters at a power plant in northern Myanmar.
At least 4 people have died and 16 missing after a landslide caused by torrential rains swept away several homes in Nganjuk, Indonesia. Hundreds more were forced to flee their flooded homes.
Hey, congrats are in order for Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, who are expecting their second child. The couple's first son, Archie, is 19 months. They shared the happy news with this black and white picture with Markle having a visible baby bump. Her due date, though, has not been revealed. She had suffered a miscarriage last summer. Well, those are our top stories for today. For more news and videos, visit straitstimes.com and subscribe to our YouTube channel by hitting the red button below.
We'll be carrying the budget statement live tomorrow at 3 p.m. Tune in for that as well as the special panel discussion right after with industry experts. Once again, I'm Haryanto Diman with Olivia Quay. Thanks for watching.